Again, thank you so much for coming. We always enjoy spending time with our important clients and offering these educational events and networking events for you. We thank you for coming out on this lovely winter evening as well. We're very proud of our stature in the industry right now. We are now one of the largest, if not the largest, association management firms in the region. And that's thanks to all of you for your support and patience and assistance to us. We thank you so much for your business. We had a very successful year in 2016. We had a record year in growth. We also won 2 very important awards and recognized by the industry. You may or may not be aware that we received the very prestigious Better Business Bureau Torch Award for business integrity and ethics, the first property management company that we're aware of that's ever received that award. We also were selected as the Management Company of the Year by the Institute of Real Estate Managers amongst dozens and dozens of firms who qualified for that. So we're very proud of that. And thank you. We have, I just want to introduce a couple of folks quickly, and then I'll introduce our distinguished panel. With us tonight is Judy Ziner, our Vice President of Operations. So I think Carla Kennedy, who is our CEO, who's standing in the back. We have some managers and several of our regional directors who are here. Perhaps they can wave and give them a round of applause. Thank you so much. And all of our wonderful board members, we appreciate you coming. So this evening, we are very proud to have 3 very special guests with us: Alderman Brian Hopkins, Alderman Michele Smith, and Pat Costello, who are going to talk about current events in the city, items that affect condominium associations, high-rise, building dwellers, lakefronts, et cetera, cooperatives, exactly, and some changes and proposed changes to legislation. So I wanted to just take a few minutes to introduce each of them, and then we'll begin with comments. And there's obviously time for questions and answers during their discussion or after. First, with us this evening is Alderman Michele Smith. Alderman Smith is currently serving her 2nd term as Alderman of the 43rd Ward after winning re-election in 2015. The 43rd Ward encompasses the vibrant lakefront communities of Lincoln Park, the Gold Coast, and Old Town, and is one of the social, cultural, and economic hubs of the city of Chicago. Shortly after graduating from the University of Chicago Law School, Alderman Smith began her career in public service as a member of the U.S. Attorney's Office. While there, she prosecuted hundreds of narcotics, white-collar, and political corruption cases, including the prosecution of the largest commodities securities fraud case at the time in the United States, resulting in the conviction of over 20 defendants. She's taken an active role in advocating for smart growth community-driven development, ensuring that developers earn any development rights via a vigorous community-oriented process to achieve the best possible development outcome. The effectiveness of this approach was most evident in the redevelopment of the Lincoln Park Hospital location that resulted in decreasing the intensity of usage of the site and the development of the Children's Memorial Site into a new neighborhood crossroads featuring housing across a range of income levels, an assisted living facility, and over an acre of new open space, critically important to all of us who live in the city. Alderman Smith has also been a keen legislative advocate for residents and businesses alike, and she prioritizes fiscal responsibilities and governmental transparency. In 2011, she successfully lobbied to delay the removal of the condominium refuse rebate that was in danger of being immediately phased out, and we thank you very much for that. That was a huge help to all of us. Perhaps most importantly, during the 2011 redistricting process, and despite nearly overwhelming odds, Alderman Smith successfully rallied the 43rd Ward and lobbied the City Council to prevent Lincoln Park from being split up into almost 5 different wards. Alderman Smith is the Vice Chairman of the Committee on Education and Child Development. It currently sits on 7 City Council committees, the Committee on Committees, the Rules and Ethics Committee, Committee on Economics, Capital and Technology Development, Committee on Human Resources, the Committee on License and Consumer Protection, the Committee on Special Events, Cultural Affairs and Recreation Committee, and the Committee on Transportation and Public Ways. So we are very honored to have Alderman Smith with us this evening and her incredible public track record. Alderman Brian Hopkins was elected to the Chicago City Council in May of 2015 and is the Alderman of the 2nd Ward. After graduating as a student regent from the University of Illinois in Springfield, Alderman Hopkins interned for the Illinois State Senate and was assigned to the Appropriations Committee. His role in the Senate helped prepare him for future positions, including advising President Bill Clinton's transition team on ways to address the national issues of homelessness, as well as serving as the downstate campaign manager for Dawn Clark Netch's campaign for governor in 1994. A lifelong Chicagoan, Alderman Hopkins returned to downtown and moved into the Streeterville area in 1999, and what is now the new 2nd Ward. He took a job in the Cook County Commissioner's Office, where his experience led him to serve as Chief of Staff to the Finance Committee, Chairman John Daly, under the tenure of Tony Preckwinkle. Along with his job at the county, Alderman Hopkins was twice voted as president of the respected community group, the Streeterville Organization of Active Residents, SOAR. Many of you participate in that as well. He also has served as vice president and treasurer and serves on the Lakeshore Planning Commission. Alderman Hopkins does live in Streeterville and is a die-hard, lifelong Blackhawks fan. And he has graciously agreed to give playoff tickets to the. If they were still in the playoffs. We also have with us this evening Pat Costello. Pat is an attorney and one of the founders of the firm Key & Costello. Since 1993, Pat has concentrated his practice in the area of association law, representing condominium and community interest community associations. In his practice, Pat has appeared before courts in Cook, DuPage, Kane, Will, Kendall, Lake, and McHenry counties. Pat has been licensed in the state of Illinois and the United States District Court for the Northern District of Illinois since 1993. He's a member of the Federal Trial Bar for the Northern District of Illinois. Pat is also a member of the Illinois State Bar Association, DuPage County Bar Association, Kane County Bar Association, and the Chicago Bar Association, ACFA and CAI. He currently serves as the chairman of the CAI, Illinois Legislative Action Committee, and is the key person for looking out for all of our interests in Springfield when legislation threatens or will assist condominium and homeowner associations. So thank you very much for coming and welcome.
Oh, okay. I'm going to use this one because I know it's working. Anyway, good evening, everyone, and welcome tonight, and thank you to Lieberman for hosting this lovely event. So can we please thank Lieberman for their hosting tonight? Give me a respect, even though I'm outside my ward boundaries. Are we in your ward? Oh my God, we're in neutral territory. In any event, I don't know, for those of you who might not know, particularly in the Gold Coast, the 43rd Ward encompasses the area from Division to North Avenue, the lake to the Middle Estate Parkway, and then the ward runs all the way up the lakefront for Diversey. Can I just ask, are there any 43rd Warders here? Do we have a few 43rd Warders? Yay, glad. So, but happy to talk to all of you about some of the issues that affect condominiums. One of the main issues in which I personally became involved in the last year or so was the regulation of the short-term rental market. Many of you know that this has been a big issue in our city, and frankly across the world, and I do not say that with any exaggeration. Cities around the world are grappling with the sudden changeover of neighborhoods from residential to hotel that has been caused by this phenomenon called Airbnb and other short-term rentals. So faced with this issue, there are over, at the last time we checked, there were over 6,000 listings in the city of Chicago, most of which were concentrated in 4 wards. And this is one of them, and Bryant is one of them, and mine is one of them, and Wrigleyville is one of them. Hugely concentrated, and also overwhelmingly concentrated in high-rises. So Alderman Riley, a few years ago, had very valiantly put together an ordinance that attempted to deal with this issue, because as some of you know, during the recession, when a lot of people couldn't sell their units, they started renting them, which led to people partying in your buildings, and strangers in your buildings. And in fact, this phenomenon is so widespread that I don't know if you guys read the report that in New York recently, there was an Airbnb residence in Trump Tower. And they were renting it while the president was there. So this, and the listing, what they were talking when they went on the listing, they said, well, you know, if you just tell the Secret Service that you're visiting in the building, you can get right in. So when this came out in the New York Times, the obvious security risk led Airbnb to suddenly delete this listing, and they find the owner $1,000. So short-term rental restrictions have been very hard to enforce. So beginning in 2015, going all the way through 2016, we really fought a battle in City Hall to get this under control. And if anyone wants more details, I'm happy to answer questions. But the good news is, one of the biggest successes of this law is that we've set a baseline that requires companies like Airbnb to actually share their registration information with the city of Chicago, which will then be, and initially matching it against what is called the prohibited buildings list. And how many buildings here are on the prohibited buildings list? If you're not, and you are interested, see me and I'll tell you how to do it, but I see Lieberman has been giving good advice. The fact is, I certainly believe that the condominiums in my ward should have a right to manage yourselves and judge how your buildings are going to be run. And the way Airbnb was structured, it was easy to do an end run around your own condo decks because Airbnb masked the address. And if they just show a picture of an interior of an apartment, unless you really know your neighbors, you might never know that this is going on. And we've seen circumstances in which people they're all of a sudden they're up at the pool and they're like, who are those 20 people we've never seen before? We're here at Airbnb and we're using the pool, or things like that. And there have been actual public safety implications. So one of the really great things about this ordinance is that starting around now, the ordinance it's taken months and months to implement. The city should be comparing Airbnb's listing to the prohibited building lists and beginning a very laborious process of sending notices to people who might be violating your condo decks, telling them to delist that they will be delisted. They are not registered, which will probably start a round of appeals inside the city, and you might see some fallout of that in your condominiums. At a presentation that we did before, we know that there are issues in condominium law surrounding this. Our law has tried very hard to address that, and we've been recommending that everybody change their decks and their bylaws and every piece of paper they can to make them consistent with the fact that you're on the prohibited building list. But that is one of the most important things that I feel I've worked on to try to benefit the condominium owners in our neighborhood. And I know Brian Hopkins was a big supporter as well. Some other things that are going on. How about people who live on Lakeshore Drive? Do we have Lakeshore Drive or Gold Coasters or Lakeshore Drive Gold Coasters? I will speak on behalf of Alderman Hopkins and myself because, as you know, our wards kiss each other like through miles and miles and miles of border. We work very closely together. And on some other more mundane items, I'm happy to report that very soon this year, the two of us are paying to rebuild the pedestrian underpass at Division Street. So those of you that would like to have that really messy thing cleaned up, it was actually a bigger task than we thought, but it will be rebuilt this summer, as well as we're going to be, for those of you who use the bus stops along Lakeshore Drive, we're going to be having a lot of the bus stops on the east side of the street of Lakeshore Drive rebuilt to make them a little friendlier within the space confines that we have. So as you can see, when you're an alderman, your breadth of work goes from repaving a street all the way to forming a lot of city policy. Now, the other comment I'm going to make is that, and we're happy to take challenges, take questions about this. Our city is facing a lot of financial challenges. You all know this. You read it in the paper every day if you can bear to read the paper every day. As is our state, which is facing even bigger challenges. And I will say that we are trying very hard to responsibly, I can speak for myself, and I know I can speak for Alderman Hopkins, I'm sure he'll say the same if not stronger, that we are trying very hard to responsibly manage the finances of the city. Because we all live here, we all are invested in it, and there have been a lot of decisions that have been made in the past 40 years that have not necessarily been in our own self-interest, and now we're having to pay for them. So I'm happy to talk about that a lot more now. I just wanted to talk about some high-level things about short-term rentals that I'm happy to address, and then happy to answer any question as we go through the rest of the evening. And with that, I'm handing it over to Alderman Hopkins.
Smith and John, thank you for the excellent introduction. You know, the last 2 years of my life as an alderman have pretty much sucked all the air out of my own memory, and I'd forgotten about a lot of those things that I did. I'm sitting here listening to it, but yeah, I remember when my life was simple like that, and I was in college in Springfield. But one thing that was left out of that bio was the fact that I spent 10 years on a condo board at a Michigan Avenue high-rise, 535 North Michigan Avenue, managed by community specialists. 8 out of those 10 years I was condo president. So I bring that experience to my new role as an alderman, and it prepared me adequately for some of the contentious town hall meetings that I've had the pleasure of presiding over. You know, when you've been condo president, nothing surprises you, and you've seen it all, you've heard it all, and you've been called it all. So I appreciate the fact that the industry prepared me for the role that I'm in now, but it also gives me the set of biases that I have. And when Alderman Smith came to me and said, "Do you want to help with the Airbnb legislation?" I signed on immediately and started thinking about some of the experiences that I had trying to enforce the rules as a condo president and what that was like. And to put it in another context, in another industry that has been dominating the headlines lately, the airline industry. Okay, there was another story today, I don't know if you saw it, about Delta Airlines denying boarding to a family with an infant or a 2-year-old. And of course the YouTube video is already up and everyone's talking about, Delta and the way they handled it versus the way United handled it. And I think we can all agree that there were a lot of bad decisions made throughout both of those incidents, and you can sort of Monday morning quarterback the whole thing. But if you take away the emotion of it, what it comes down to is an entity's ability to enforce its own rules and the way it approaches that. And what was interesting about this Delta situation was you could tell all the airline staff who were very aware that they were being filmed by camera phones, were trying so hard to be very respectful, at the same time saying, "Sir, you are breaking our rules, and we need you to comply with our rules." And this guy, who seemed like he was probably a nice guy, he just didn't want to get off the plane, he realized that in this environment that we're in right now, he had all the advantages. As someone who was breaking a rule, regardless of the logic or common sense behind the rule, you could argue that one side or the other, he knew that he had all the leverage in the situation. Not the airline, not the airline's attorneys, not the airline staff who have been well trained, you assume, and who were trying to respond to a situation. And I think there's a lot of parallels to that compared to what is happening today in community associations and property management in particular. And I hope, Pat, you're going to talk a little bit about House Bill 3755.
Only for about 2.5 hours.
Okay. Good, because I feel like we're under attack as an industry, and I feel like there's an assumption that in any dispute the condo board members are the ones in the wrong. The condo board president should be the one vilified. The property management company should be the one that's immediately subject to suspicion and they should be sued, and they're the ones that are violating the rights of the homeowners and so on and so forth. The media plays into that quite well. They're always looking for the next dispute that they can sensationalize, and if there's going to be a villain in it, it's going to be either the board or the property management company. But when you dig down a little deeper into nearly all disputes, it's about someone who doesn't want the rules to apply to them. It's about someone who is either breaking the rules, seeking to break the rules, looking to get around the rules, or doing something that causes a disruption in the community. And going back to the Airbnb situation, one of our colleagues at the time was offered a 300% salary increase to resign from the Chicago City Council and to go work as a lobbyist for the Airbnb industry. And he took that job and started immediately doing what he was paid to do, which is to reframe the debate about the legislation that we were introducing. And there was a lot of compromise and a lot of give and take and several drafts. And all through it, the industry, I would argue, was somewhat successful in characterizing the debate as one between, mom and pop sorts of homeowners, those poor innocent condo owners who just want the right to make a few bucks, versus evil government and evil aldermen who were only in it for themselves or who were in the pockets of the hotel industry, when quite the opposite was true. I felt all along I was representing my neighbors. It wasn't just us as aldermen. We were doing what we were asked to do by the high-rise communities that I represent, which was to solve a problem that was caused by a relatively few people who didn't want to follow the rules, didn't think the rules were applying to them, and even though individually they may only own 1 or 2 units, the industry itself, there was a report recently, $67 million in revenue in Chicago alone this year throughout the Airbnbs, the various platforms. If you combine the market capitalization of Marriott, Hyatt, and Hilton, it does not equal the market capitalization of Airbnb. This is not, a mom and pop operation. This is a multinational, very powerful, very well organized industry, and they came at us with everything they had. And they made it very difficult to pass the ordinance we were able to pass, and now they're making it difficult for us to enforce it. That's why the one piece that I insisted, I compromised on a few things, but the one piece I insisted was to have high-rises in particular to opt in proactively to the prohibited building list and leave that up to the individual condo boards to enforce. And I did that because I knew we on the city were going to be overwhelmed by this, and the staff at BACP were not going to be able to keep up with the complaints that were coming through. So again, it goes back to the ability of an association to enforce its own rules. Nothing is more important than that. And this whole idea that we need to, weaken condo boards, we need to take their authority away from them, we need to hamstring them and limit their ability to regulate themselves is ridiculous. It will lead to an empowerment, even more than they already are, of the people in every association who want to break the rules. That's not a good thing, and we need to fight against that. And I hope we can talk a little bit about House Bill 30.